We're here with legendary Hall of Famer, basketball talent, superstar, civil rights movement member, Spencer Haywood, now filmmaker as well. And Spencer, I've got to ask a question because I read the incredible story about your when you had to go to the Olympics, you needed your birth certificate.
Yes.
And how fascinating that was, because I came from a different country and we had my birth certificate was Israeli and was in Hebrew, and we had to get it translated.
Right.
But it wasn't as harrowing as yours, where you didn't even have a birth certificate.
I didn't have a birth certificate like a birth certificate.
Yeah.
But I did have a birth certificate.
Yeah.
Which meant that, in Mississippi, in the backwoods, so to speak, or in the country, rural, very rural area, you were born by a midwife. And the midwife is not a doctor for those young folks like my daughter out there. But they would, when the baby was born, they would write it in the Bible.
Yeah.
And that was your birth certificate. And if she registered it with the state and so on, that was fine. But if she didn't, then it just stayed in the Bible. And so my mother kept her Bible by her side at all times. So I was getting ready to go to the Olympics, and we didn't have a birth certificate. And they're like, how can the star of the team not have a birth certificate? I was like, well, call my mom. She's got one. So they called to the store near my mom, and then they had to wait for her to come from her house to the store. And then they get to the store, and then she says, yeah, I got a birth certificate. Oh, yes, great, Eunice. Can you send it up to us in New York here? And she was like, no.
It's your Bible.
It's my Bible. And I was like, oh, my God, you don't have a real birth certificate? So then we had to go to the vital statistics in the state of Mississippi. And when we went there, I didn't go there, but they sent their runners there. And when they got there, they were like, wait a minute, we got to drive all the way down like 80 miles away to take a picture of this Bible and then come back and verify the birth and then create an affidavit. And they get my birth certificate and get everything squared away, and I get back to Colorado Springs because we had left play to Nixon. We were down in Colorado Springs at the training facility, and I get my birth certificate, and I'm looking at it like, wait a minute, that's not my name. It is, but it's not my name. It is spelled Spencie, S-P-E-N-S-I-E, because that's how she spelled the name. She was not a great speller. So the midwife. Yes. Yeah. So it was pretty interesting stuff.
Can we talk about Colorado and I mean, that state in particular has played a vital part in your life back to when you were
Always.
at Trinidad, and I mean, you set that whole area aflame. I mean, it got you into the Olympics.
Yes, it did. First of all, I signed with the University of Tennessee as the first black to go into the Southeastern Conference as a superstar. And Adolph Rupp, who had just lost to Kentucky, said, well, I'm supposed to have the first one. It's first superstar out of high school. And so there was this commotion about it, and I was like in the middle, and I didn't want to be in the middle. And Will Robinson, who was my dad, who was the first black coach in NCAA history, he came down and said, well, why don't you just go to a junior college and play for 1 year? If you can maintain that B average that we've taught you how to maintain, and you can come back, and maybe we'll go to the University of Detroit as a package deal. So I went down to Trinidad, and lo and behold, I was able to play and have this tremendous year, the Junior College Player of the Year, averaging 27 points and 26 rebounds.
20 and 20, that's great.
So that's big time stuff. And so all of a sudden, in 1968, the Olympics is coming up, and you got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is saying, well, no, I'm not going to participate because there was a black boycott led by Harry Edwards. And so Kareem decided not to go. Then that sent the Olympic Committee into scrambles, and then someone got to Elvin Hayes and Wesley Unseld, and Wesley Unseld and Elvin Hayes said, well, we're not boycotting, but what they did do is they signed their pro contract.
So they couldn't go.
So you couldn't go because for guys like LeBron and all you guys. Look, before you used to have to be just a strictly amateurs, you know, wink, wink. And so they couldn't go. So then it was a big scramble on. So they were trying to bring in all of these athletes for the tryouts, and they looked around and said, well, why don't we just let the junior college guys put together a team led by Jerry Tarkanian? Because Jerry was at a junior college, and so coaching before he went to UNLV. Yeah. So he put together this team, and so we said, well, we'll take the freshman along because he's the MVP. So we go into Albuquerque with the team, and I played my first game. I had like 21 points, 17 rebounds, and 5 blocks. So Hank Iber is on the Olympic team, and he's looking at me like, oh my God, I found what I need right here. And so he come over to Jerry, and Jerry's like, you can't talk to my players right now, coach. Listen. I want that boy not to get hurt. So every game I would play, Coach Iver and John McLendon, all of those great coaches would come in like, don't get hurt. And I was just having fun and enjoying. And so then Coach Jerry was like, I got to cuddle you. And so all of a sudden when they selected the Olympic team, the first player was picked was me. I was like, oh, okay.
From tiny little Trinidad.
Tiny little Trinidad. And only because I went to Trinidad was I able to play in the Olympics, because if you were a freshman at a major university, Tennessee or any of those schools, you couldn't play because they didn't allow freshmen to play.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? My life is so weird.
Well, can you talk about the Olympics? I mean, you were that was, I mean, historically that Mexico City Olympic, it's infamous for the movement,
the
really.
Fist, yeah.
And I mean, you were there with George. I mean, this was a big group of talent that, even though a lot of guys didn't go,
but we had like Tommy Smith, John Carlos, Lee Evans. Those were basically track guys, with the exception of Bob Beeman, who jumped over the pit, set a world record. We had in swimming, we had Dina Deveroni and all of those great swimmers. And on the track team, again, one more person, because we went to the track meet. It's like because you had to support your team. We didn't have like they do in America today, and like when you go over to say to Rio, you have a contingency with you. We just had to be the Olympic supporters. If you were on another team in sport, you had to go support the track. So this guy walk up to us like, all right, guys, I got something new for you today. And we were like, well, you're just high jumping. What could be so new about this? So, and it came around to his turn. He runs up to the bar and jump over it backwards. We're like, what the? And that's the Fosbury flop, which everybody today knows, well, wow, that's how you jump. And so that was the first time that happened. And then we went over to the pit to watch Beeman jumping. He's like, I'm going to set a record today. Yeah, you talk all the time. So he jumped 28.6 or something. And we were like, oh my God, he nearly jumped out of the pit. And then, of course, we go to John and Tommy's meet, and we're like, what are they going to do? Because they were the guys that were at San Jose State, where Harriet was the professor.
Yeah.
And Lee Evans, all those guys, they had that great San Jose track team. So we were like, what are they going to do? But they got to win. And so the gun go up, pow. So they running. And Tommy, John Carlos was a little surprised when Tommy pulled ahead of him. So he looks over, and you'll see it in the film. He looks over, and he didn't realize the Australian was pulling up behind him. So he's like, oh my God, I blew it. So he stumbled in and got third. And so they get up to the medal stand, and they put on the black glove, and we're like, whoa, that's pretty cool. You know, we're just kids. We're thinking like, yeah, it's a cool thing. Say hello to the brothers back home. You know, like we in solidarity with you, but we had to go represent the United States. That's who we are. We are United States citizen. All of a sudden, the head of the Olympic Committee, Avery Brundage, jumped in and like, wait a minute. We're going to like escort these guys out of the Olympic Village. So, and line us all up. And we're like looking at, what are you doing? So he's escorting Tommy and John through all of us and through the crowds and the photographers and everybody, because it was such a commotion. And we were like, wow. And then he turns and look at the rest of the team. If you do anything else, anybody do anything, we're going to send you home beforehand. We're going to expel you, whatever. And we were like, wow, but they're sending him home. They just won gold and bronze. I don't understand. And so we talked about some kind of salute and everything. My dad, Will Robinson, who adopted me and raised me, he came down there and he was like, I'm going to kill you if you think about it. You know I'm going to kill you. And then we were sitting in a meeting, and Avery called a meeting with all of the Olympics, and we were all of the Olympians, and we were like sitting there like grooving and like, yeah, whatever. You know. And so the door kind of creaked open. It like had a little funny sound to it, like, and he walks in, and we're like, oh man, that's Jesse Owens. And he started talking about, well, you know, the reason you shouldn't boycott and you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do this. And we were like, yeah, so what? You know, we young guys, arrogant. George Foreman, like, I'm not going to do nothing, man. I'm not doing nothing. And so Jesse gets angry because you're running our mouth while he's speaking. He's like, hey, what would any of you SOBs feel like? He didn't use SOBs, that son of a bitch. But what would any of you SOBs feel like if you had to run before Hitler? And we were like, yeah, you got a point there. So we all cool, you know. And George says to me, guess what? I had this flag, and I want to show America that we are like in solidarity. I'm going to bring out, when I knock this Russian out, and I'm going to pull out my flag. And I'm going to walk around the ring. We was like, you ain't going to even beat the Russian. What are you talking about? And so, and the whole talk around the Olympics were, you could always find Spencer Haywood and George Foreman in the commissary. Because we were 19, we were growing, and we were like, we want food. All this good food. We just want it. And we love it. And we were there with the Russians and all the Eastern Bloc countries, and we're just eating like madmen. And so Hank Ivey was mad one day, and he's like, where the hell is Spencer? He should be here right now. And John McLendon said, he's in the commissary eating with guess who? Him and George Foreman. So the moral of the story, George gets paid for eating. Man, I'm a freaking vegan or something.
Well, how do you go from that? You went to college right after that. You went to Detroit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be crazy. Like to go from. I mean, you guys won it. I mean, that was such a story.
We won the gold medal, and then we have, you know, and then all of a sudden I was the MVP in basketball. And basically for the Olympics, because they took it from John and everybody to me. I was like, well, okay, I'll take it. And so all of a sudden we have 300 or more colleges now clamoring, like all of the major universities. You got to be average too? This is the perfect athlete for us. He's an American gold medalist. So then Will says, will you honor the deal that we had before when I took you away from Tennessee?
How hard was it to make that decision?
It was very easy because it was going home. My city of Detroit had a riot, and our city was in shambles, and Will Robinson was going to get the job as the first black NC2A coach in history. So, and he's my dad. He got me out of Mississippi and out of the cotton field. So I was like, my loyalty is unwavering. So I came back to the University of Detroit, thinking when I came back from the Olympics that I would be ostracized, and black folks would like look upon me like, this Uncle Tom, what did he do? So when I got to the airport, they had like 5,000 people out there, you know, black people, white people, everything. I was like, whoa, this Olympic stuff is pretty cool. Because Howard Cosell had also talked to me about the Olympics, and he was like, you're never going to be able to live it down, young man, for what you did. But we're grateful in America, but the black folks are going to hate you. What do you got to say? Yeah, so it was that kind of thing going on. And so when I came back to the university, it was like just so awesome. We had straight sellouts. Everything was just perfect, and we got down to number 7th in the nation. Then the alumni says, well, look, we're starting 5 blacks. What is going on here? So they changed the lineup.
It's crazy. And then we had a fall because we had different players in the lineup, and we just didn't know how to play together at that time. Like we didn't have the everything in place. And then at the end of the season, they decided they wouldn't hire Will Robinson as the coach. And I was like, well, what kind of mess is this? So what am I going to do? So I was very hurt. Will was very hurt. And the ABA, the American Basketball Association, who did not get Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as their player, the number 1 player, because he was between both teams, Milwaukee, and where would he go in the ABA? And he signed with the NBA, and the NBA then came after me and says, well, you want to leave college? Your coach didn't get hired, and you're unhappy. We'll take you on. And I was like, really? I can go pro? And so that's when I jumped pro. And when I jumped into the pros, all of a sudden I had a press conference, and this Mark Storm was like, you know, how are we going to sell it to the public? And he got up and sold this whole idea that I was, you know, this poverty kid and so on, which I was. But he went on, and he said, well, the main reason we're doing this is because we are sons and daughters of former slave owners and slavers, so we're giving him reparation. I was like, whoa, that's Hannah Storm's dad. Yeah, that's Hannah Storm's dad on ESPN. Yeah, so I was like, that's pretty deep. So then it floated through, and people thought it'll never happen again. You know, he's just a fluke, and if he gets 5 points and maybe 4 rebounds, maybe he proved the point that you could be a pro at that young age. And I got 30 points and 20 rebounds for 82 games, and was the MVP, Rookie of the Year, leading scorer, leading rebounder, MVP of the All-Star game. So I won all of the awards. And then Denver decided, well, we got a winner here, and the ABA put in Dillies. We got a great movement now. So we're going to give this guy a contract for $1.9 million. Whoa. So they give me this contract for 1.9, and I signed it as a 20-year-old without agents or lawyers or anything. And when we read through that contract over and over, it came up short because it was saying the contract is worth $400,000, and the 1.5 would be in this dog-off plan that would go in through the stock market. You put $10,000 in the stock market from age 20, and I would receive the total of 1.5 from age 50 to age 70 if the stock works. Yeah.
So it was a fraudulent contract. And from there, I jumped from the ABA because the ABA says, well, same thing Detroit did. They said, well, we can't, you can't go back to college. You can't go to the NBA because the NBA have a 4-year rule that stated that no player could come into the NBA without 4 years of college or just set out for 4 years before you could enter into the NBA. And so the teams that came after me was the Lakers and all of them. They said, well, we'll sign you. You get paid for this year, but you got to sit for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And if everything work out, maybe you have to go back into the draft, but we will see. And so Sam Schulman came in and says, no, I'm going to pay him and I'm going to play him. And the NBA were like, you can't do that. Are you nuts? And so, therefore...
that's how you ended in Seattle.
That's how I ended up in Seattle, but the case started. They filed suit against me for an injunction not to play. I filed suit against the NBA and the NC2A as collusions, and I was saying, well, I want to play. And so the case started, and we went to the lower courts, to the state court, all the way to the Supreme Court. Took a complete year of battling, and I won it.
Yeah.
And that's why you have Michael Jordan, Julius Erving, George Gervin, Moses Malone, Larry Bird, all of these great players. And in the current group,
Kobe, LeBron,
Durant, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, all of them are under my ruling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And they don't even know who I am.
Well, that's kind of the sad thing, and why this movie is so important.
So imperative, yeah.
I mean, do you start to see, it was only 2015 when the Hall of Fame came calling. Like,
Right.
Can you talk about these last few years and the change that has come? It seems like people are starting to finally notice.
They're starting to notice, and in that notice, they're beginning to see me as what I was as a player.
Mm.
And players recognize games, so they're like, wait a minute. This guy was that good at that young age? Let me read up, let me check him out some more. And so they're like, wait a minute, he's the reason I'm here in the NBA? So they beginning to really know it. So, and Charles Barkley has been an advocate. He's been this guy telling, boy, y'all better check up on that guy. And there's no reason he should want for anything in the world because much as he's made. So let's just give an example. For a guy like LeBron, he's $100 million richer, 4 years onto his playing career, richer.
Yeah.
And so on. Kevin Durant, 3 years, and so on, and Jordan. And so now they're beginning to learn and understand, and they're looking like, maybe this guy was something else, And so 3 nights ago, I sat down with Michael Jordan, and he is deciding that maybe I should take up this mantle and educate the young players. And he's going to bring me down to the Bobcats, and we're going to strategize how do he come out and make a statement so that all of these players begin to know what's going on. The NBA and the NBA Players Union are in the process of changing the name because it's always been under early entry, which hid my name from it.
Yeah.
But it is the Spencer Haywood rule. So they're going to change it to the Spencer Haywood rule. So, everything happens with me. I tend to think that it is, and I know it's for a fact, that it happens on God's time because my time and the way of the world is not good. So all these other things happen because I was in God's space at the right time, the Olympics, going to court, all these things were just not planned at all. It was just happening. Mm. And when I did have my roughest time is when I didn't believe, and I wanted to be in charge. Mm. I'm in charge of this.
You survived that time, though.
I did survive it, yes.
Yeah.
And that was in 1980. I dabbled with cocaine, and so I just watched my game went from 28-12 at the beginning of the season down to 7-5 at the end, a shell of a player. And then I came back to God and said, hey, how do I get out of this mess I got myself in? Believe. And so I believed, and I worked my program. So I have 30 years of sobriety from that experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
Since you brought up game recognizes game, I've got to ask, back when you were at Trinidad, did you look at the other guys playing around the country and think, well, I could dominate half these guys, if not more than these guys. I mean, there were some big names that you didn't get to play against.
Well, yeah, I mean, the only guy that I was saying I might have a little bit of a dance with is Kareem. And because I looked at Elvin Hayes and I looked at Wes Unseld and you know, guys that came to the Olympic trials with me who got cut from the team. Pistol Pete Maravich, he was throwing 44 a game.
Yeah.
Rick Mount was averaging 39. He got cut.
Pistol still holds your record.
Yeah. And Calvin Murphy, he was averaging 33.
Houston,
Yeah.
Texas,
so he was like, he was averaging, I think, 33 or 34. And I was like a mere 32. So, yeah. So I didn't get a chance to play against all of those players, but you know, at Austin Carr, you had all of these great players in America at that time because basketball had just made its big turn, because in the '66 was the first time that you saw an all-black team beating Kentucky, and so all of a sudden the universities decided, well, wait a minute, we'll just let these guys come on in now, because we had passed the SATs and we had good grades, because that was the big deal, you know, back then. It wasn't basketball. It was like grades, get to college and get a degree and, you know, go into society wouldn't work. So all of a sudden, all these players just came in like 67, 68, and 69. So it was just an influx of great players. All race of players. Yeah. We even then started looking to Israel and other places, you know.
Yeah, overseas
for players.
Started in the 70s.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the game opened up.
I've got to ask, when Seattle moved to Oklahoma City, did that hurt at all? Because Sam and what they did in Seattle, they championed you. Yeah,
well, Sam, you know what happened in Seattle? We had the case, who was fought in Seattle. And before this case was won, we had 17 teams, and now we had expanded to 32 because of this case. So for the owners, you were averaging 250 million for franchise. Now they are up at $2 billion. For the players, we ushered in thousands of players under this ruling, under my ruling. And all of this stuff happened in Seattle. So for all those years, they put in guys like Nate McMillan. They hung his jersey up there. They hung Fred Brown. No disrespect, you know. And Jack Sigma, Gus Williams, and so on. But they never would hang my jersey.
Yeah.
Because Seattle people were angry because I don't know what was going on there with the ownership. And they were angry at me. And I'm like, well, why are you angry at me? Why wouldn't you retire my jersey? And just as a token, the then owner of the Supersonics, which is Clay Bennett, he wanted to move the team. It's still a team. So he came in and says, well, this would make Seattle people great and happy if I retire Spencer Haywood's jersey. So they had a big jersey retirement, and then 20 games later they moved the team to Oklahoma, and they took just the team, no logo, no nothing, no jerseys, no nothing. So I missed out on all people knowing what I did. Yeah. And so because my jersey is in storage over at the University of Washington.
Wow.
And so by moving to Oklahoma, they erased all of the records that I own. I own the rebounding record, the scoring records, the minutes played per game, all of these things, and they just erased them out.
Wow.
So another beating.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite players is Kevin Durant in Westbrook, you know, so we can't associate because Kevin can't say my name when he break a record in Oklahoma. They just announce it, you know, he broke Spencer Haywood record. Don't say it again. You know, they can't mention it, and so the players can't say anything about it, so there's no connection. And so it's a sad day in Seattle to this day now, because I get a little sad thinking about it, because Seattle in the 1979 championship, which I was not on that team, but we had the largest crowd in the history of the NBA at a playoff game. It's 44,000. That was set in Seattle. We were the number 17 team in terms of attendance and value when they stole the team. So I can't say they just moved it because it was stolen in the middle of night. So that's a heartache. And then when I went into the Hall of Fame in 2015, I don't have a team because I wanted to go in as a Sonic. And so the year before, Gary went in as a Sonic, and then I go in as a Sonic, and we're looking at each other. We don't have no jersey sales. We don't have no notoriety. We don't, like people can't say, well, there's a Hall of Famer sitting right there on the floor.
Yeah.
So we don't get any of that stuff. So hopefully Seattle will get a team in the next 2 years, hopefully, and I know they will. But until it happens, because the last time we were in Seattle, there was a owner and a bill being passed, and you had city council says, well, no, we don't want to build another road for the new stadium, so they voted it down. So it's like, hey.
What did it mean in 2015 when the Hall of Fame recognized what you'd done in college and the work that you put in? Because you did dominate. And it's crazy how dominant you were at that level.
I know. I was dominant in college and also dominant in the pros. And to have like 4 times when I was a finalist and I get that call like, no, sorry, Spencer, you can't come. So that was very painful. And then on the 5th time I get the call. And that was the last year for it. Otherwise, I'd go back into the pool. So after waiting for 20 years, and then 5 years of disappointment, 4 years of disappointment, and then I get the call, and the hall is thinking, well, he's going to be so upset. He's going to do all this press stuff against us and everything. And I said to them on my headline statement is, it's not on the hall's time, not on my time, but on God's time, which is right on time. So that's how I feel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you watch anybody today that you like watching? I mean, what players catch your eye today, or are you kind of still indifferent about some of the players today?
Oh no, I'm not indifferent. My wife and kids say I live too much through basketball, and I live particularly way too over the top with LeBron James because he reminds me of my game. He reminds me of my play. I feel his pain. I felt the pain with Kevin Durant this year when he was like, they had him up 3, and even though we're not supposed to cheer for Oklahoma, I was like just right into my TV, everything, and I wanted to go down to Oklahoma and say, man, get Draymond Green out, get him into a fight or something, like so we can get this thing over. And you go and play Cleveland, then I'll be really torn between two lovers. So, and I love Steph Curry. I just love these players. I live vicariously through them because it is who I am, and I provided all of that avenue for them. So I cannot separate myself from it. So I think I'm more of a fan and more of a person of basketball than I would ever want to admit, except here. And speaking of your home country, I was where you were born.
Israel.
I was just in Israel 3 years ago with Shimon Peres, and we was doing the World Games, trying to bring peace throughout the world. And then I went back another year later. And just went on a world tour to go through all of the holy sites and everything and just travel throughout Israel. And I was surprised, not all of the other stuff, because I did my history lessons and all of that stuff, but the food was so great. The food was like, I was like, well, wait a minute. Why isn't we have this food everywhere talking about it, like Italian food. Oh man, have you had the Chinese food? Oh, have you had Japanese? I'm like, it's real food. It's really cool.
It's God's food.
Yeah. God's food. That's right.
So if you don't mind, as a final story, I find this so moving because I have older brothers. Mm-hmm. And one of the stories you've shared in the past in your interviews is the day you dunked and your brother changed his respect for you, let you walk next to him.
Well, I had this brother, Andrew.
Yeah.
And he is, like 4 years older than me. And I was like this kid that's growing like a leaf. And I'm growing. And I'm like pushing him. And we just played ball. And I followed him around everywhere he go because I idolized him. I was like, I want to be like him. He's like Mike. and we get into this guy's backyard, Pee Wee backyard, and I'm in a rural county, and we're just balling and balling. He's like, get up in my face. Yeah, you can't. You're losing. You're just blowing this whole thing. So the ball came off the rebound, and I just grabbed it with all my might and went back up and dunked. I was like, what did I do? And then so all the people around was like, what did he do? What was that all about? And so then I went out for a jump and I hit it. I was like, oh man, my stuff is on. I got it. And after the game, I normally walk behind him because he was like trying to keep that dominance over me. And he was like, come on, bro, let's walk together. So we walked down the railroad tracks, locked like brothers and like equals. Mm. And that was the night I cried about basketball. And that was my big night that I fell in love with the game.
You haven't looked back since.
I haven't looked back. It's a love story.